Okay, so this is chapter 3. Chapter 3 is going to get into typography, and typography is basically how do we format our text. And so if we take a look at this first figure there in the book, as you notice, there's a lot of typography going on there. We got different colors, we've got italicized, we've got different font sizes, different fonts, and there's just a slew of different things going on. There's just a ton of different things. So that would be somewhat of a complex CSS. Well, not really complex in a sense, but there's a lot of styling going on. But there's going to be a lot of application to the styling, a lot of div tags, a lot of the spam tags to basically apply a lot of those things. We've got centering, we've got HR tags. Again, there's a lot of stuff going on there. So if we take a look at this very first example, and I go to example 1 and open it up, there you can see that we have nice big text up here, and we've got some regular text over here. And if I go into my view page source, we can see that we are using a specific style sheet. There I have a div tag, it's ID content. Now let's talk about IDs and classes. Let's go here and take a look at the style. So there I have an H1 tag, and there I have a P tag, Times New Roman. And whenever we have an ID tag, that's going to be a pound sign. Whenever we have a class tag, that's going to be a period, and we'll see that here in just a second. So apparently these div tags are not being used. Okay, so this div tag and this div tag are not being used. So even though that they're there, they're not being used anyway. So if I were to come over here and go into that style sheet and then add something like this, we'll see what that will do. Notice that now everything is basically center aligned. Why? Because everything is inside of that div tag. So again, if we look at that style sheet, we can see that main says text align center. And when I look, here is the main tag. So everything between here and, well, there is no ending div tag. So everything thereon will basically, they really needed to put another div tag, an ending div tag. You should always have matching ending and beginning div tags. So anyways, but the point of that is we can then create a style for that particular div tag. Everything between the div tags will take on that style. Okay, so so here we are. If we take a look, here we have some serif fonts. Again, notice that the T, the lowercase t, has a little hook. The rabbit has little tags at the bottom. That's called a serif. Sans serif do not have those tags. So notice these are sans serif tags. Here's cursive fonts. They're kind of got some not straight lines. They kind of got some curvatures to them. Here's fantasy fonts. They're a lot different. Monospace fonts to mean that each letter takes up the same width, character width. So a capital letter W and a lowercase I both take up the same exact space. Most fonts are non-monospaced, so that they will take on, so a lowercase I will take up less space than the capital letter W. So when we talk about size, we can talk about centimeters, we talk about millimeters, we can talk about IN, which are inches, PT, which are points, and PX, which are pixels. Pixels are probably used the most often. PC, which are picas, and then we have EMs. Now EM is the width of an M, a capital letter M. Rem is equal to the root element default value, so it takes the root value and makes that the size. Ex is the height is equal to the height of a font's lowercase x. Okay, and we have percent. So, and then we have these different. We got x small, x small, x small, smaller, small, medium, large, larger, extra large, and x large. Those are actual sizes we can use. So, do we have this one? And it talks about loomings. Okay, but anyway, so here we can see we've got, looks like that's probably a H1 tag that is serif. And notice chapter 1 is also a serif, everything else is serif. So we could actually mix up the serifs and sans serifs so that they don't have that. So so we got a body tag, the font size is going to be 62.5%, an H1 tag is going to be 2.4 EMs, that's a pretty good size. P's are always going to be 1.4 EMs, and a list and a item is going to be 1.4 EMs. So if we look, that's kind of what this is talking about. So if we take a look at the source, there we have H1 LI. So let's take a look at the style sheet. So again, just like in the book, the body is going to have a default size of 6.2 or 62.5%. H1 tag is going to be 2.4, 1.4, and 1.4 for everything else. Right. So again, if we take a look at that, what it looks like, that's basically what it looks like. Notice these hot drinks are pretty small. So let's take a look at what are those? That'd be the body font would be 62.5%. Okay. Everything else has a specific size. We can also talk about weight styles, variants, and decorations. So notice we've got lighter, normal, bold, bolder, and it basically kind of goes on from there. So we can really make things a lot more bold, a lot shadowy looking, maybe a gray, that type of thing. We can all do that through some of these different tag styles as well. We can also do underline, overline, and line through. So let's take a look at the next example. Yeah, same thing. So there we are. So there we got lighter, normal, bold, bolder, and then we can see the rest. So if we take a look, it's basically using the style sheet. So let's take a look at the style sheet. So you notice there I have dot normal is normal, dot bold is bold, bolder, lighter, a weight of 100, a weight of 200, a weight of 300, 4, all the way up to 900. So again, what does that look like? Well, there I am looking now. Notice this is where we basically see the different classes. The dots are classes. Pound signs are IDs. So we could have used a pound sign here and did an ID. So example here is a bold. If I were to change that to a pound sign and do a save. Now if I take a look at that, notice that it looks fine, but when I do a refresh, notice the bold went away. So what I would need to do then is come in here and change that bold from a class to an ID, because IDs are pound signs. Again, IDs are more for single items, classes are more for bigger items. And if I do a save, and now when I come back out here and do a refresh, it will basically come back as bold. Okay, so there's classes and IDs. Pound signs are IDs, dots are classes. So again, we can apply all of these different classes or IDs to each item. Let me do a refresh. There's the ID bold. So we can get very, very specific on how dark and how. Now notice that some of these don't look the same. I think it really depends on the different versions and the different browsers that they take on shape. Apparently with IE11, or I should say Chrome, we don't see any variation between 100 and 500. They all look the same. That may take on a different effect if we look at it as with Internet Explorer. Still don't see it there either. Let's take a look at it with Firefox. Come on, Firefox. And I don't see it there either. So might be more of a Edge, the IE Edge. I may be more for that feature. But anyways, just realize that again, as we saw in one of the other chapters, not every single browser is going to react the same way with all of these different tags. So we have to basically be very, very aware of that when we're developing web pages. It may look great on the browser you're using, on the computer you're using, but now you throw in a Macintosh and you throw in a different browser, it's not going to react the exact same way. Okay, so back to the book. We can also change the different spacing between our letters and the line height. So you notice we can actually change the spacing very, very, very narrow, and we can do that through letter spacing, colon, and then some type of spacing. M's again are very wide, those are very big, so that would, using 0.1 M's. Let's see if yeah, so there we can see that they're just using the different font styles. But again, we can actually use a letter spacing. Let me copy that and actually paste it into a style. Let's see what happens when we do that. So now when I come back over here and look at, notice that we have basically spaced this one out a little bit more. So okay, so we can really change the typography. So we can change the font style, the font size, the font color, the font spacing. We can actually change the line height. Notice the difference between this paragraph and this paragraph down here. So we can change the spacing between lines as well. Now this is a great graphic. It's basically saying that Windows has its own fonts, Unix has its own fonts, and Mac has its own fonts. There's only a certain number of fonts that are called web safe that are utilized the same between all of the different operating systems. And those fonts are Arial, Arial Black, Comic Sans, Courier New, Georgia, Helvetica, Impact, Tahoma, Times, Times New Roman, Trebuchet, Verdana, and Wedwings. Windows and Macs, basically here's a more of a tighter friendly one, is Arial, Helvetica, Courier, Georgia, Times, Times New Roman, and Verdana. So here's some different iOS fonts that are basically available just to iOS. Again, we can actually type in font family Arial, sans serif. So we basically can tell it that that's what we're utilizing. Here's another one, FF Meta, Web Pro, Tahoma. So we can really, really get more specific. Again, that might be too specific, that we might not be able to use that with all the different browsers. So do we have an example of that? Yeah, so look at the source. This has got an M, EM. So if we look at the style sheet, there we have M, font style is